yeah, the way you have this set up, we should, if my video's off, I'm not on screen, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Thanks for all your help.
You're welcome.
Oh, Tim, one other thing. This it's gonna be recorded, correct?
Yes.
And that, okay, she does that.
And you're recording to the cloud, or how are we gonna post?
Yes.
Log? Okay, great.
All right. So the stream is all set. It's on YouTube and it's on the Middlebury stream page as well. We are technically live right now, just so you know.
Great. Thanks for all your help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whenever I start the live stream, it automatically makes us go live. And I'll press record at like 12:59. So, Tim, maybe you can answer these because I don't think I got answers for them. Like right now, the chat is open to everyone. Are we going to shut that off for attendees once things get started?
Yeah, I think if we could, that would drive more folks to the Q&A. I usually used to do something in the introduction that said chat was only for technical issues, but that didn't ever seem to work. So
Okay.
let's just disable it, and then they can go right to Q&A. Hey, Jolene, we got a great view of the top of your head. There you go.
Thank you. I am trying to close some of the many things that are open on my, and I wasn't paying any attention. Hi, Danielle.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, better now that I've had my group here calm me down.
That's good.
All right. Just have a pile of things open.
Jolene, just so you know, this is live.
Thank you.
It is live on YouTube. It is not, the webinar itself within Zoom is not live yet. I got that wrong the first time.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm going to make this webinar go live in 4 minutes, and then I'll start recording 1 minute before. Are there any other settings that we need to adjust? I have Q&A is set so that people can submit anonymous questions. The other is all the questions can be seen and they can be upvoted by attendees, but attendees cannot respond to the questions. And then right now the chat is on. I'll turn that off before we get started, or just as we get started.
You guys got that?
Yep, looks good. I'm going to start the webinar right now.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Betty. Hey, Jolene. Thanks for doing this.
Welcome. Hi, Lori.
Oh,
Betty and Jolene, I'm going to be answering some of all of the questions that came in advance during my talk, and David will also, so you need to refer to those.
thank you.
So we are one-
This is Tim here. I'm just gonna jump in for some logistics. Did you want staff council to read questions from the Q&A box, or are you just going to handle all of that?
It'd be better if one of you can keep an eye on it, and then you guys can control what questions, you guys read them to us. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll, have you prioritize the ones and group together ones that are similar themes and so on.
Very good.
Right, one last logistical thing is for the slideshow that Stacy put together, none of us had the bandwidth to be able to show that. So Danielle in ITS, that is the host, is going to show that at the end. Lori, if you wanted to do that introduction, I think that would be the most smooth.
You mean at the end of my talk, Tim, and then turn it over to David after the thank you video?
Don't know. When do you think it might fit in best? I'm really jumping into this in the last minute. I don't really know much about it.
Danielle, you have it and you're going to play it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it might be good at the end of the meeting.
Okay. So it's 101, and I'm ready to start the recording.
Okay, I'll just make an executive decision that we're going to do this at the end of the meeting, which will be at a little after 2:15, right?
Okay.
Okay, Danielle, I'll turn back to you.
I have it ready to go. I just have to share my screen.
Okay, great. And Betty and Jolene, you're welcoming everyone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you first.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Welcome to the SLG Town Hall with President Patton and members of her administration. I'm Betty Kafumbe, representing District E at Middlebury. I'll go over a few housekeeping topics with you before handing it over to President Patton. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll have a link available to share with you as soon as it's ready. As you know from past meetings, your mic and camera are off. We do have a Q&A box where you can type any questions or comments you may have, and we'll try to get through as many of them as time allows. We want to thank SLG for extending the length of the meeting to allow time to address the questions. So thank you, Lori, for that. You can upvote questions, and they will rise to the top, and SLG will answer them in the order they appear. I'm going to pass it over to President Patton now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Betty and Jolene, and thanks again to Staff Council. I think this tradition of having regular town hall meetings, I remember when I first got here, we didn't have any, and then we had one, and now we have 4 or 5 a year, which is really great, and I appreciate that greatly, and I'm very excited to continue the conversation. And also just to begin by saying, I think we've had an amazing start of the spring semester. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that start looks like, a reminder of our goals, and then I'll turn it over to David, who will be doing what is now a regular feature of our open budget process, which is sharing financial information with you and allowing you to engage and talk about some of your priorities. And a reminder, of course, that you can also share those priorities with the Budget Advisory Council, the BAC, which I'm going to be talking about as well during my presentation, because that group is the group that is really working hard with Jeff Kaysen and David Provo to continue to make sure that we get your priorities as part of the voices that are considering our larger budget. So reminder that our major goals for this year are two and very simple. One is getting through COVID and getting out the other side. And the second is working on our anti-racist initiatives. And I would say that we have really created a third form of major activity. And that is working hard with Leadership Alliance and a model of adaptive change. And I want to thank Laura Carrot-Nudo and Ellen Usselton and Kathy Vincent for stepping up and really working energetically with Leadership Alliance on thinking about that. One of the ways that they have talked about this model of adaptive change is looking out on the balcony, walking out on the balcony as much as we can as we move forward. I love that metaphor, and I think we want to adopt that as much as we possibly can. So, as you know, we're still in COVID, and therefore the two questions as I think about any presentation are beginning with what's around us and what can we expect, what are we seeing around us and what can we expect in the weeks and months ahead. So I'm going to be organizing thinking in that space as well. So the first is beginning with an overview of finances, which David will then follow up on. There are some factors that are hitting us at this spring semester that are important for us to take into consideration as we move forward with our new budget process. Reminder that this is only the second year of our more open budget process. The first is that we had some student melt at the beginning of this semester that has impacted our very optimistic outlook in January. We're still optimistic, but it's modified. David will be saying more about that. And the second is, of course, that we will not be reaching our budget numbers in study abroad due to the loss of about $4.5 million in spring revenue that was assumed in the budget. So those are two hits that we are managing now. The good news is that we think we can manage it through our keeping our expenses down, which we have been doing, you have been doing beautifully. Thank you, staff, again. So we think that we can manage through it. But I will also just say some of the positive things that have been happening is that in addition to our amazing operating expense management is Ms. Monterey will exceed their revenue budget by nearly $2 million, which is incredibly helpful contribution to our overall bottom line. I want to thank Ms. and give a shout out there again. Other factors in addition to the good expense management include the $5.8 million in federal and state grants. So we do not expect to use endowment to address the cash flow shortfalls from the pandemic, but we are moving forward with the short-term borrowing to address the shortfall, and I know David will talk about that as well. I want to remind everyone that our endowment reserves, what we can spend from the endowment, is down to less than 4 million, essentially zero. It started almost at 100 when I was here, when I started here. That means that we have to build back our reserves. And I and the trustees agree that this is a priority for our long-term financial health. You all know this, but it's an incredibly important piece for all of us to remember. Reminding us of the open budget process, we are building that budget, working very intensely with faculty resources and staff council and budget advisory committee, most importantly. We don't know what the summer looks like yet. But the key thing that is a really great factoid that I wanted to share with you is that both SLG and BAC went through the same process of making priorities. And we are prioritizing salary pool for all employees, and second, addressing that very important salary compression issue that folks have been concerned about. The interesting thing is we did these two surveys, both within SLG and BAC separately, and we came up with the exact same priorities, which I think is really wonderful alignment of our priorities between folks who are leading it's the staff basis and faculty basis as well as SLG. So we have some important and deep unity there. I also wanted to, before I moved on from our financial question, to share with you some larger overviews to answer some questions that came in the chat. The first is about the restoring of the Employee Educational Fund. I want to acknowledge how important that is. Right now, we have as a community, we prioritized that salary pool and the wage compression as our top priorities. So the restoration of some of those other things is not going to be at the top priority. However, during our budget process, restoration of these funds will be looked at, and we hear you that it's an incredibly important piece for folks. Many of you asked about Tim Parsons' piece. I saw it was put in the chat. Tim and I work very closely together. He's an awesome colleague, and I think it's a really thoughtful piece that raises important issues that we should all care about. During the pandemic, reminder, you all know this, but we prioritize wage continuity with full benefits for all employees and are continuing to commit to do so. We were one of the few colleges in the country that made no cuts, no furloughs, and continued benefits and kept everyone employed. And we did so as part of our community conversation last spring. That's an incredibly important commitment to us, and we're proud of the fact that we did that. And that's what Eric Mosley has called Working Human. It's a wonderful podcast that I'll share with everyone later. And it's a real priority for us to begin to think about what it means to work human. But as we move back into the ongoing work of the college over the next 6 months, the ongoing question that Tim raises about how we think about faculty and staff salary is an incredibly important piece that we need to address. And it's an important piece that I think Budget Advisory Committee, which is both faculty and staff, as well as SLG, can talk about. And I would encourage also Faculty Council and Staff Council to talk about this as well. I think it's a really good community conversation to be having. We are deeply committed to paying a fair market wage for all employees, and that's a #1 issue that Tim is raising, and it's a good one. I wanted to also address briefly, while we're on finances, the rumor that faculty are going to get raises and staff will not, related to the issues, the really important issues that Tim raises. That is not correct. Thank you for checking before spreading that rumor. Check before spread, ask. It's great. We are prioritizing a modest salary pool that will be for both. I also want to just give you a little more information about the compression issue. Someone also raised that in the question in advance that we got. Just a reminder that last January, pre-pandemic, we wanted to move quickly to change the wage for our lowest paid employees to more align with a living wage. We know that this has created a compression issue. COVID then hit. We have prioritized keeping everyone whole in COVID, but we also were working on that Mercer study. I wanted to give you a timeline for that work. Even though we're still in COVID, because of the concern, we have put that back on the table, accelerated it, and within the next month, we're going to be completing and finalizing the study, and we will also complete new staff salary bands and levels within the next 3 months. And I want to thank HR for stepping up in this space. And a reminder again, as part of the budget process, we have all said, both SLG and BAC separately, that compression is our second highest priority. So in the new budget for the new year. So a reminder that we are only also in our second year of this open budget process, but I want to thank the new committee of BAC and all who are providing input on our priorities. And what we're finding as we get down to actually ranking how we're going to think about things is that we are exactly aligned, and that's very inspiring to me. So I think I've answered most of the questions in the chat, and now I'm going to turn to the board meeting. Board meeting was truly exciting on any number of levels. We continue to do the anti-racist work. That's one of our 2 priorities for this year. The trustee committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion met for the first time. That's a new standing committee. And we did very wonderful anti-bias work and training with Mahzarin Banaji, who is the leading person who introduced the idea of unconscious bias now 2 decades ago. And she gave an update on her work and did some wonderful work with the trustees as well. And we hope to continue to engage with her and work with her as time goes on. She said in her presentation that Middlebury, in her mind, was the ideal place to get an education, which I thought was a lovely thing to say. We also talked about setting tuition and financial sustainability. We made a budget resolution to make sure that we got to a balanced budget with a small surplus every year. And that has been something we've been talking about over the last several years with faculty resources. And I've mentioned it in a couple of earlier occasions. We're moving forward on that. It's a good discipline for the trustees to put on themselves. And I think they feel that very keenly. We also talked about another and had a meeting of another new committee. In addition, the Committee on Faculty on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion met with faculty. That was also the Faculty Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. That was a really inspiring meeting, and there was a lot of good conversation back and forth. We made a very much diverse in viewpoint, and that also helped create a healthy give and take. We also have a new External Relations Committee, which is focused particularly on communications and the work that David Gibson has been doing with his team, as well as advancement and the Office of Advancement and ramping up to our campaign. And that was, I think, the second or third of the external relations, the first really robust one focusing on our campaign pillars. So that was a very exciting meeting as well. I wanted to share with you very generally that we've come up with 3 different themes for our campaign. One is the theme of access, which will include student funding. It'll include all sorts of other really wonderful focuses on making sure that our students have access to all of the Middlebury experience. And thinking also about increasing financial aid and creating a better financial experience for all of our students. The second is the area of academic excellence, and that's a second pillar. And we're going to be looking at endowed professorships there, and particularly thinking about the strengths and literacies, literally fluencies that Middlebury can bring to mid-21st century education. Broadly speaking, cultural fluency, digital fluency, conflict transformation fluency, what we do after all the faculty and staff work on the Engaged Listening Project, for example, as well as environmental fluency. And this goes across all of the departments and units at MID. So we're very excited about that, academic excellence. And the third is the student experience, and particularly looking at funding for experiential learning, which our accreditors have said is one of our best features. And I want to thank all the staff that have done so much to create that integration of experiential learning in the spaces there. We also were thinking about 3 capital projects: 1, a student dorm, 2, a student center, which was a big priority that the SGA and others shared with us in conversation with trustees a couple years ago. And 3rd is a new museum, which will probably be a little bit far off. But all of these really speak to the student experience and making the student's experience as vital as we possibly can make it. So that is an update on the board and update on finances. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about where we are now. Mark and Jen will not be doing the health update, but they'll be doing a health update at a later time, a later workshop. So want to make sure we're focusing mostly on other issues today. But I do want to speak about some of our challenges that we are experiencing and need to see ahead in the immediate future. The first is the vaccine and its delivery here in Vermont. There's ambiguity and there are differences between us and even some of our neighboring states. We're working literally daily with the Vermont Department of Health. So far, we are seeing a very clear and principled rollout. We may not agree with some of it. We've been pushing on a weekly basis to get educators vaccinated, higher educators rather than just K through 12. That has not been successful, but we are dogged, and perhaps with the new Biden announcement and a few other things, we will still be able to get most of us vaccinated this spring. We are anticipating and seeing COVID fatigue among our students as well as faculty and staff. And we want to make sure that we remain vigilant when the conditions and weather are improving. But it is a real concern for us, and we're thinking a lot about how to mitigate it and address it. I'm very excited about our Faculty at Home series, which if you haven't seen it, I would encourage staff particularly to engage with. It should be wonderful. We also continued work with committees on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And some of the stories that have emerged in the Anti-Racism Task Force, which is led by Crystal Brown, has been very exciting to see, as well as the Twilight Project and some of the projects that emerged from J-Term and the really exciting courses that were offered there. We're also really moving forward on our new residential life skills program called Blueprint, that's led by Rob Mueller and several other staff members who I hope are on today. And we're moving forward with, as you saw, grants for mid-data, as well as our environmental work, Energy 2028, and our public humanities initiatives, as well as some really great conversations on pedagogy and the sciences. So those are all the things that are really exciting. And because of that, and I want to just remind you, Nicole Curvin is here, that we've had an incredibly strong admission season. If you haven't seen it, just to remind us that our regular decision apps were up 30%, international applications up 37%, domestic students of color up 22%, and first generation applications up 24%. That is because you, our staff, have created such an incredible environment to work in. And I want to thank you all for creating a mid that clearly so many people want to come and be at and learn in. Just a reminder of where we are in terms of our COVID dashboard. You can jump online and see it, but we have 2 active student cases, 2 active employee cases, and 9 students under quarantine today. 12,937 negative tests today out of 12,948. We continue, as you know, to test all students more frequently than we have in the fall semester because of those different strains and so on. But you, the staff, have come forward and allowed us to have a more frequent testing regimen that has again helped us really keep our numbers low. And I'm so proud of everything that we're doing. Where we are in terms of our numbers, as I mentioned, we are different than the previous semester. Our current student numbers are 2424, 398 have withdrawn, 422 students fully remote, and we're currently over slightly over 1,900 students on campus with us. A reminder there that we are modeling actively for what the fall will look like. And we are assuming that students will be wanting to come back. We hope that we will be able to offer, we are not going to make any official announcements yet, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to offer as many normal programs as possible, as most other colleges are. And a reminder too, a little bit of our changes that you'll see all around you now, that we will continue as we go into the next part of the weeks and months of future spring semester. We're going to continue to be more frequent testing. We will be continuing to do in-person, although we started off with remote classes. We are not been doing our phases, but Derek and his team, our Dean of Students, are regularly updating students in a weekly town hall, which we find is working really well. We have streamlined our conduct policy so that our sanctions are simpler. And many of you, but not all of you, know that we have been celebrating winter with Friluftslivet, or open air life, which was culminated and will continue really in a less rambunctious celebratory way in Winter Carnival this past weekend. You've been seeing the students sitting around with the fires, the fire pits, the tree lit campus, the fireworks that went off without a hitch this weekend. We're really, really thrilled with the atmosphere, even in the Meyer Golf Course, with all the student activities that we've been able to do. We hope, just thinking about the weeks ahead, to have an in-person graduation this year. We're looking at several models for this. Again, the rules keep changing in terms of the opening up. I think the opening up is going to be as hard to wrangle as the closing down has been, but we will imagine that there will be in-person graduation for our students. And we're still working on exactly what that's going to look like, given how quickly the rules are changing. We do not think that we will do reunion this year, given that it's a very different kettle of fish to have 2,000 outsiders come in on campus. No, none of our peers look like they are sponsoring reunion either. I'll end on a couple of really positive, fun notes. The first is sharing some progress on Energy 2028. Our biodigester is going to go online the first half of this year. It's very exciting. And our solar field will start to be built and hopefully will go online within a year. And we just also received the first installment of a $5 million 3-year renewable grant that continues our work with the Pew Foundation on Projects for Peace, which we participated in for several years, that focus on funding summer student projects that promote peace building. Back to that skill of conflict transformation that we've been talking about is one of our ways that we're really strong. So we're hoping that we can continue to play even more of a leadership role in Projects for Peace, and we're very excited about being able to step up and do that. And the final thing I'll say, in addition to announcing a new grant, is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You have changed the face of our campus. Middlebury staff has been the major driver of contributing to our reputation, now doubly, for academic excellence and safety. We are doing everything we can to create a work human atmosphere. And I will just signal that at the end of our time together, we're going to be featuring a video that staff council put together. Part of Work Humans values that Eric Mosley talks about is that peer-to-peer thank you is as important as administration to employee thank yous. So even though I will never tire of thanking you, and SLG will never tire of thanking you, staff council has done an awesome video that they're going to be sharing at the end of this time as well. So I'll stop there, and I will turn it over to Dave.
Great, thanks, Lori. It always amazes me how much Lori can share in short period of time. I'm going to highlight and how aware she is of everything that's going on this campus. I'm going to give just a little more detail. As Lori mentioned, the board took action in a number of areas. I'm going to share the work that they did. We presented projection 2 at the January board meeting, and projection 2 was an evaluation of our financial performance through the month of December, 6 months into our fiscal year. And you'll remember that we had a budget deficit that was approved by the board last summer of $18.5 million. And so in the month of January, I shared with the board that, hang on, this should come up. I shared with the board that we were estimating that the projected deficit for 2021 would be $10.2 million, a significant improvement. And even though we weren't going to hit our net tuition revenue, the positives that were appearing in the budget were we ended up receiving $5.7 million in federal and state funds as it related to COVID, which was a big help. We continue to receive dollars from the federal government as well as the state. We do not have a clear understanding yet of the recent $1.9 trillion approved last week. We will be diving into that and have a better understanding that over the next couple of weeks. We also we're seeing positive expense reductions. The first was $5.6 million lower in salary costs. That was really primarily due to part-time labor as well as the hiring freeze, so that we were able to stay committed to our wage continuity and benefit continuity by all agreeing to pull together to navigate through COVID with the folks that remain, and that is greatly appreciated. Benefits were running more favorable, primarily 2 reasons. One is lower compensation budget, as well as we continue to see trends in the healthcare benefits of being lagging. The good news is over the last couple months, we have seen better utilization of our healthcare plans. One fear we have is that people are delaying care that they may need, and we encourage folks to go get that important care. And then non-personnel expenses, OTPS, were running favorable by $3 million. So as Lori mentioned, so we presented that projection two. The projection one that we shared in the fall was a $15.9 million deficit. And in January, we shared that it could improve to 10.2 million, but still a significant loss. Lori touched on these numbers. This is the evolution. So the first line is the total number of students, corresponding withdrawals in remote from the fall semester that were presented at the October board meeting. On January 29th, when we presented to the board, we felt pretty good that spring was exactly in line with where we landed in the fall. And when we moved to opening up this February, we were encouraged to see roughly the same numbers, 290 withdrawals versus 298, and 393 remote versus 368. But you can see the next 2 points, and Lori just gave you the March 15th numbers, and they correspond to these numbers on this page. We've now moved from 298 withdrawals to 398. So we lost 100 students those first couple of weeks of the semester, and we saw an increase, but not as much on the remote. So that had an impact on our net tuition revenue. We are estimating that impact to be about, when we did this back in January, we were estimating that we'd have a variance to budget, but we projected a number of about 122 million in net tuition revenue. And that $5 million adjustment is now reflected here. So the total impact on net tuition revenue based on our projection is we will miss it by another $5.8 million. The good news, as Lori indicated, is we believe currently today, with the continuation of what we're seeing on expense management, that we are not recommending any drastic steps to accommodate that. We do think also that we have the leeway of the deficit that the board approved. And right now I have nothing that indicates or suggests that we would not hit the $18 million deficit approved by the board. I want to shift into budget. As Lori mentioned, she mentioned the Budget Advisory Committee. She mentioned the prioritization of what is important to us as we start to build the FY22 budget. The FY22 budget is normally sent to the board each May. This year's May board meeting is in the middle of May, and it is our intention right now to bring forward an FY22 budget for that May meeting. You'll remember last year we did not bring the budget forward until the end of June because of the uncertainties of COVID. Lori mentioned we do have uncertainties around summer still, but right now we are planning on a fairly normal fall. We expect net tuition revenue to be up. And that's primarily because the students, the 290 withdrawals in the fall and the 398 withdrawals in the spring, a number of those students are going to want to come back. And so as we start next year, we expect we will, and it is Nicole's intention to bring in a freshman class, fall first year class, roughly the same numbers that it historically is, around the 620 to 630 range. We did not want to penalize the class of 21 for the pandemic. So what that means to all of us in the field is we will have an increased demand on the capacity of the campus next fall, and that is what we're working on. So as we do our preliminary work on the FY22 budget, we start with the approved budget deficit from FY21. We add back in the revenues that we would anticipate that would come back. The largest impact on revenue was to the schools because we did last year's summer programs fully remote. Right now, it is our intention that 8 of the language programs will fully be here on campus, 4 will be remote, and we will have sort of a hybrid summer, but we expect most of that revenue to come back. We then add back in expenses at the college and the schools that would need to be restored based on a normal year. And then we have a couple other changes, puts and takes. Right now, we continue to draw down on the endowment of $5.3 million to cover interest expense. The road to financial sustainability assumed we would have that number to 0. The intention was to do that by FY21. That was delayed 1 year because of the pandemic. And we think we can restore that in FY22. So right now, before we begin our work, we think we have about a $2.3 million problem. That number will change and evolve over the next couple months as we build out the budget and bring greater certainty to what the fall looks like. So Lori mentioned on this prioritization, and what we looked is at 2 different things. The SLG explored ways that we could reduce cost or generate new revenue. And I should mention the first one that was highest rated was to increase undergraduate tuition modestly. The board did take that action. Lori mentioned that the board did approve a 2.5% tuition room and board increase for next year. So that is no longer on this list because it in fact was put in place. But you can see that the SLG had said, could we figure out a way out? Back in 2015, we were at a 9-to-1 ratio of student to faculty. We currently are closer to 8-to-1 right now. So that was been given as a priority. Jeff is working with the faculty leadership on a multi-year process to explore that. The second one was if we kept all positions that were frozen, that could save $1.3 million. And if we were to reduce the highest contribution in the retirement plans from 15 to 11, you remember anyone that was here before 2017 and is 45 and older at the college is eligible for that amount. If we were to move everyone to the high watermark of all other employees of the 11%, that would save 2.2 million. That was prioritized as the least favorite. Down below, these are expense calls on the FY22 budget. And Lori mentioned this. We asked all of SLG, then we asked the Budget Advisory Committee. Budget Advisory Committee is made up of 24 faculty, staff, and students. We asked them to prioritize as we think about building the budget for 22, what would you like us to focus on? And the number one answer from SLG was salary increase pool of 2%. I would call your attention to number 7. We also said add an additional 1% and move that up to 3%. You can see SLG says that's a lower priority than at least doing something. And I'll show you what the BAC said in a minute. Salary compression, which is a hot topic. Lori just discussed it. For SLG, that is the second highest priority. And then you can see all the other items that would be calls on the budget. My takeaway from this is that the senior leadership team would like to have a salary pool, address compression, even if it means the restoration of OTPS that had to be cut. So all other expenses, if we have to turn that spigot on slower than restoring them all back to the previous levels, their preference would be to do that. So we then asked the same questions to the Budget Advisory Committee. And as Lori indicated, this is in a comparison form of how they were ranked. So salary increases of the 2% was the number 1 ranking from the Budget Advisory Committee, faculty, staff, and students. Salary compression was number 2. Staff promotions were number 3. SLG favored slightly higher new positions and promotions that were promised previously and so forth. But again, both groups are saying turn the spigot on OTPS at a slower rate. So what does that mean? That means as the finance team and the budget office we work with SLG, we are focusing on FY22 based on these priorities that have come from the community. So I'm just going to give a little more detail about the resolutions that Lori mentioned from the board actions. The first is she mentioned 3 projects that the board approved last year when we refinanced the 2010 bonds. We added $10 million in additional bonds that would allow us to move forward with the renovation of Warner Hall, Voter Hall, and Dana Auditorium. Dana Auditorium has been on the books for now going on close to 12 years. We will start that work this summer. Warner renovation was in a series of older building renovations. We did Monroe last year. We deferred Warner this past year because of COVID. We have put it back in the sequencing, and that project would start this summer. And then Voter is a conversion of some residence halls into faculty offices in connection with the Warner renovation and the future use of Warner. That funding totals $10.8 million. 10 million of that has already been identified with the proceeds from the bonds. So that is not an increase burden on the 22 budget. Lori mentioned we approved tuition increase. It's a modest increase compared to what it's been in the past, but that 2.5% will generate an additional almost $4 million. And then the last one, the last 2 I want to talk about. Lori discussed that the reserves in the endowment now are less than $4 million. So as we look at the short-term cash issues related to the pandemic and the operating deficits that we've been suffering, we asked the board to approve short-term borrowing and spread it out over 7 years. And this is in response to people's questions, the community's desire to deliver on wage continuity, to not allow the pandemic to disrupt any one year. And so we will manage that cash deficit, those cash deficits over the next 7 years by borrowing money on a short-term basis, $30 million, and paying it over a 7-year period. Why borrow? Right now we're about ready to finalize the rates, but we believe the rates to borrow $30 million will be somewhere in the 1.6 to 1.8%. So very low cost of money. We could have elected to go back to the board and ask them to redesignate funds in the endowment, but we chose not to, and that we would use this short-term strategy. And then the final resolution was around financial flexibility. In 2016, when President Patton arrived, she implemented the Road to Financial Sustainability. And this resolution has been discussed now for 2 to 3 years, and it really requires the finance team, my office, and to answer a question: how do we prevent this from ever happening again for future generations, where the college is operating with deficits and living beyond its means? So this is a resolution that would require us to bring forward a budget that has an operating surplus. So next year that could be $1. But then after that, that FY23 and on, that we produce an operating surplus of 1% to 3% of the unrestricted, the net tuition revenue, or the net revenue. That 1 to 3% means in the range of somewhere between $3 and $8 million a year. Those surpluses would be put in reserves so that the next time there's something like the pandemic, we have the ability to cover those costs. The second one is to operate at a 5% endowment draw. You'll remember that we've been trying to get to this point. We were very close this past year. We had to take the $5 million out for interest payments, but other than that, we are truly at the 5% in FY21. And then finally is a requirement to pay off our debt. In the past, we were not paying off debt. We were just refinancing it every 10 years. And now this requires that 50% of our outstanding debt is fully amortized. What that means is that we're actually paying off the principal and interest. We had achieved this last summer, so this isn't something we have to do differently now. It's something we had been working on the last 3 or 4 years. So that's the financial overview that I shared with the board. As I mentioned, the finance team is focused on building out the budget. They will be communicating with senior leadership, with SLG, and with department heads to help build that budget. It'd be great to say that we will be in a budget, we will be in a place that we can project and develop a budget that we know we can achieve, but I'm afraid that the uncertainty with the pandemic to bring that budget forward in May, that will be difficult. But we feel that the demand for Middlebury, the Institute, the college, the schools remains very high. And assuming that things return back to normal, we should not have any real difficulty achieving the goal of creating a break-even budget and being able to do the things that we have prioritized.
Great, thank you, David, for that. I think this is the time to go to questions, unless anyone else from the administration wants to chime in on that. Okay, I see a number of the questions have been answered, but I'll just start at the top with the open questions. Can you please update us on SLG discussions around staff returning to campus and how remote work will factor in going forward?
Laura?
Yeah, Laura could answer that.
Sure, this is a great question and hot topic in the world of human resources. As we have all recognized, work can and has been done differently over this past year. And so absolutely, we are going to be thinking intentionally and planning for a return at some point in the future. Hopefully, we're talking about that potential being in the fall, depending on conditions. And so there will be a great deal of conversation happening among the members of SLG and each area, thinking through what are our operational needs for the fall and how can those be done, including opportunities for the potential for a continuation of remote work or perhaps hybrid models, as many of us have experienced with our school-age children. So there will be more to come on that for sure. And individual questions, absolutely, please direct them my way so we can begin chatting about that. Really what we need to be thinking about is flexibility for the future.
Okay, thank you, Laura. The next question was around the group of people that exceeded expectations from the last fiscal year. And does anybody know if there might be, if that might be part of the Budget Advisory Committee's work, or if there's anything that might be done to address that in the future?
Laura, you want to go or you want me to go?
Why don't you go ahead, David?
Yeah, so it's a fair question. Again, the decision last year was really centered around with the uncertainties of a pandemic, what did we want to prioritize? And we prioritized everyone, right? We said, let's keep everyone employed and let's keep our benefits. The expense of that was no one got raises, no one got changes in their compensation, even if they exceeded expectations. And I want to be clear, there is hundreds of people that have been exceeding expectations this current year. But we collectively as a community said, no, let's maintain the wages of everyone. And that is where we need to stay focused. As we come out of the pandemic, I would absolutely be open to some way to recognize and appreciate those people who have exceeded expectations last year as well as this year during the pandemic. But right now, there is not a financial plan to fund that, but that is something that Laura and I can explore.
Thank you. Let's see, the next question. It looks like there's a question about new pay bands by July 1. And I'm not sure if that's part of an overall with the compression, wage compression issue as or related to the Mercer study. I don't know who might want to take that. New pay band.
That's for Laura.
Sure. Happy to take that. And so as Lori and David mentioned, we have ramped back up the Mercer compensation study and moving forward with that project, which will also include building out salary structure and administrative guidelines. And as Lori mentioned, we hope to complete that project within the next 3 months, and that will involve conversations with SLG and reviewing and approving changes to the structure. And as those decisions are made, we will communicate more information and a confirmed timeline for any impact and changes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing that the next question was a little bit related to that and exceeds expectations. So I think that's probably was stated pretty clearly by David and Laura with the new Mercer study. What about maybe related a little bit to that, the reinstating the education benefit for staff? Did we cover that earlier, or is that something?
Yep.
Okay.
We did. We're definitely going to consider it. Again, given our financial challenges, we're going to do everything we can, but we can't guarantee that everything's going to be restored.
Okay. And let me see. There is a reference to a news article down here about, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review that yet, so I'm not sure if that's something we want to tackle at another time, but it references students being group funding because of Middlebury's falsely advertised needs blind financial aid. I don't know if admissions has seen that or can respond to it.
Nicole, do you want to address that?
Sure, I'm happy, and maybe David can fill in.
Yeah, I can as well.
And Derek can
as well. Maybe Derek, if you start, and I'm happy to fill in anything on process.
Sure. So what I would just say is that both as a result of COVID and just as the course of life, students and their families' financial situations sometimes change. And we are open to reconsidering aid allotments as those circumstances change, and we respond to them as we become aware of them. I can't speak specifically about a case that appeared in that news report or on that GoFundMe page, but that's our general process. These are not static situations, and as we become aware of them, we work with students and their families to respond.
Yeah, I would just add that there is always a process of appeal and conversation, and Student Financial Services works individually with each person. And this referred to an incoming student, and certainly admissions is in touch with students and families often. COVID is an incredibly fluid situation, and we're trying to be mindful and supportive of families and students as they think about joining the Middlebury community, but more importantly, as they think about continuing on through 4 years of the experience here. So I think there are many ways in which we're trying to support students, especially in the event that something has changed since the time of their application to the college.
I would only just add that the staff, that particular case, the staff worked incredibly hard. We can't, again, as you can imagine, share the details, but the staff worked incredibly hard to address the students' concern. And I believe, Nicole, that the concerns are being resolved, if not resolved now.
Thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, and also just to say what a wonderful example of the role and importance of staff in this space.
Let's see, there's, well, I guess this would be a technical question for our folks in media services about perhaps closed captions for future town halls. It did get 5 upticks, so apparently the that might be something we can address with them. I don't know, Danielle, if you want to chime in, if that's a possibility. Closed captions for future town halls?
VJ's on the line too.
Thank you.
The short answer is yes, we can turn it on. And in fact, I was chatting with Danielle as soon as I saw the question. So Jolene, we will make sure that it is turned on. And the transcript also can be produced in the future. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a question here about, has SLG thought about or responded to repeated requests to the AAUP to discuss the financial issues on campus, which we are discussing, but do you want to address that at all?
Sure, David can also just, we want to work through the government process that's in place. We have faculty resources. We work intensely on a biweekly basis with faculty resources as well as budget advisory. And last semester, and we're very open again, or last spring, and as well as, I think it was last spring, sorry, I was still in the fall for a second. We did have members of AUP come to the Budget Advisory Committee. We also had members of AUP come to the Financial Resources Committee. So both of those things are the case. We also have a member of AUP on the Financial Resources Committee. So AUP is represented, and we continue to be open to conversation. We haven't refused a meeting. We just want to work through traditional governance processes, and AUP has a very strong voice. I want to also underscore that I welcome AUP's perspective and voice, and we very much have it as part of our regular governance processes. David, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would just add that this president, when she arrived, made it very clear she was going to be extremely open and transparent. So when I hear questioning of whether we open the books are open. And I often work with student reporters to try to educate them when they claim the information is out there. A lot of the information is on the current finance website. And I had some great meetings with our students to walk them through how to understand the footnotes and the financial statements. Be glad to do that with anyone. If we can keep it with groups of people, Lori and I often talk about maybe I should host once a semester just a financial open session, but we're not hiding anything. The one question that has come up, which Lori and I are clear, we do not think this is an administrative question. It's a question to the faculty and staff at Middlebury College. And that is a question of showing every employee's salary. Public institutions are required to do that. The SLG salaries are publicly displayed on the 990 every year, so we're not hiding anything there. But we do not think it's the administration's decision if faculty and staff want to have an open look into everyone's salaries and wages. So I would encourage faculty and staff, the current governance model, to have those conversations and make a recommendation to the SLG if that's what people are looking for.
Thank you both for responding to that. I have a question here. Talking about adaptive change, how will we embrace a process of return to normal so that we capture and build on the silver linings and lessons learned during COVID?
I think that's such a great question, and it's really important, and a couple of thoughts there. I have asked SLG as well as faculty, as well as Leadership Alliance folks to continue to think about what those silver linings are, and to identify them. You know, what are the major pieces that work for us in terms of academic practices? What are the major pieces that work for us in terms of what staff really like about the changes they've been doing, and so on. So we're hoping to, in Leadership Alliance, as well as in Academic Planning Group, and Jeff, you might want to speak more to this as well, really focus on identifying the things that are working well and building on those. So we want to make that part of Faculty Council, Staff Council, and Leadership Alliance, and academic planning moving forward. And I know a number of units have already begun to think about that in some really exciting ways. So I very much appreciate the question. It's a very Middlebury spirited kind of question. And its constructive engagement is very much noted. Jeff, you want to answer more?
Yeah, just would add to that one of the things that's been interesting, as you all know, we had a recent call for proposals from the Provost's office on related to our strategic directions, and quite a number of those focused on lessons from COVID in terms of what different units are interested in doing, what different academic programs are interested in doing to take advantage of the possibility of remote education for some of our summer programs, for example. So there are, I think there's a lot of stimulation out there about what we could potentially be doing. So I think there are going to be multiple venues for us to sort of turn to what those lessons could be, but I think there will be quite a few.
Great. Thank you. We still have a little bit of time here.
Jolene, I think
Yes.
it might be good. I'm just looking, Colleen, if you wanted to talk about the language school sessions and the reunion guests, I thought I answered that earlier. I did, okay, but you might want to talk a little bit about reunion, and a couple of people have asked about it, so it might be worth just saying a couple of words.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, so we announced a few weeks ago that the reunion for the class of 2020, the various classes, the reunion 2021, so those are the classes that end in either a 1 or a 6, will be remote this year, as reunions were last year. We felt it was important to make that announcement early in order for people to plan whether or not they would want to travel, and we could do more extensive planning for a remote reunion. So there's a lot of very creative thinking going on. The question did come up at CMT today about whether we would reconsider that. And at this time, we are moving forward with very creative digital programming for reunion. Bringing a number of outsiders to campus is not the same, for instance, as it is to hold a commencement of students who have already been on campus and been in the Middlebury bubble, particularly since what we've said to date for commencement is that outsiders will not be included. So that's where we are right now with reunions. The other announcement, which was tough to make, was that when we canceled or postponed the classes of O's and 5s who didn't get a reunion last year, we promised them they could come back the weekend after reunion this year, and we basically had to say, we can't bring you back. So that's where we are right now with reunion. And if there are any changes, we'll consider them very, very carefully and see whether there is any reason to change our minds. We are also monitoring what all of our peers are doing. I think the question was also related to language schools, and I can't answer that one.
Yes. Go.
Steve, why don't you go ahead and answer?
Sure. And so I just wanted to say that the decision process for the reunions was very different for the one for the language schools. And it wasn't possible, I'm sure, for advancement to imagine bringing back 2,000 alums for a very short period of time on campus. But the language schools will be following all of the protocols that made the college semesters successful. We'll be doing pre and post-arrival quarantines, multiple arrival testing, physical distancing, PPE, and all of the things that are necessary to keep the campus safe. So we have 6, 7, and 8 week programs that will be run essentially on the model of the college, and are not comparable to a weekend arrival of 2,000 people on campus. So there are tremendous challenges around running the summer program successfully, but the revenue involved and the experience of the students was important enough that we're willing to go ahead and run those in person.
Thank you. I have another question here. Please do host a finance open session. I guess it's more of a statement, but that would be terrific and it's greatly needed. I agree with that. Even though you have done so much in terms of sharing info and demonstrating transparency. Lori, did you want to?
Just to say, I think it's a really great idea, and part of what our accreditors in their assessment of our strengths and where our challenges were, they said you've already started a more open budget process that leads to a lot more financial education by virtue of consideration of the budget process, which is great, and we've already seen that in terms of the slides that David shared and so on. But I think just kind of going over stuff, because we have staff turnover and a lot of faculty turnover, and so going over stuff on a regular basis of kind of the basics, and even those basics change given our circumstances, are incredibly important. And so I think that's a great idea.
Agreed.
Laura, I'm wondering, there's a number of things we might want to group together around things like the APS and how we're going to keep track of the hard work, and some other queries around that. I'm wondering if you might want to answer those.
Sure, I've been trying to answer questions in the chat and writing. Lots of questions swirling around about the APS. Really, our intention was to pause this process. So many folks were busy focusing on the priorities of the spring semester. And so this was intended to provide some time and space to focus on those priorities. People are more than welcome to continue to use the APS format if you found that to be helpful. The pause was not intended to be a pause on feedback conversations and goal setting and planning for the future and professional development. And it is my hope that that is still continuing, and we will absolutely be happy to offer some guidelines and as we continue to plan for what does the next phase of performance management look like here at Middlebury. Exceeding expectations. There are so many folks, like David said, who are exceeding expectations. This is not meant to be the one and only way to capture that. And reward and recognition is just part and parcel to the values here at Middlebury. And so I don't want to parse that apart and say all of that is placed on hold. What was placed on hold was the APS form that folks submitted by March 31st of each year. So this is really great conversation. This all came out of our Modern Think survey several years ago too, and we had some really great focus groups about that, and we want to pick up on those conversations moving forward for the spring. So there'll be more to come in that regard. And I will continue to answer the questions in writing as well if I can.
Thank you, Laura. There was another question. If we want to take one more or two more, I'm not sure. Can anyone speak to the bread loaf? Whether or not there, and maybe I missed it because I've been kind of watching things, but is bread loaf planning to be in person or fully remote? And I'm sorry if I missed that, but I'm seeing some comments about bread loaf.
I'll take that one.
Thank you, Jack.
Breadloaf will be remote this summer. That decision was just made several days ago. They're going to be doing a sort of full court press to recruit students for the summer remote. Last summer, there were a little over 230 students that were studying remotely. We're hoping for more this coming summer. It was a very hard decision to come to. It involved discussions of facilities, the preparations we need to do, the ability to bring faculty here, and ultimately we decided to be remote for this summer. So that was the conclusion there. And I think, as I think I answered in one of the questions too. Some of the language schools will be remote. The majority will be in person. But those, so we've come to a lot of factors went into all those decisions.
And if I could just add, just so people know, we're still operating under the governor's guidance, which requires us to set aside 5% of our campus housing for isolation and quarantine. And, you know, that's a consideration too. That's not, I mean, Jeff has given the reasons that drove the breadloaf decision, but with language school students on campus, as well as student workers, undergraduate research students, and perhaps students who are doing internships in town living on campus, that's TBD. You know, that is a real factor that we have, at least as of now, we still have that guidance that we have to follow.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Jeff. I am wondering if this is about the time that we might want to start the video, or I defer if we.
Yeah, I think it would be a perfect time. We have about, I think the last few ones, Bennington campus, quickly, we are still thinking, Steve, about using the Bennington campus for a couple of our schools. So that one's done. The higher priority given to people worked on campus and exceed expectations. Thank you. I think that's really important feedback. Appreciate that greatly. And the others, I think we probably can take. I've got, those are a couple about Bennington, and I'm not sure I understand the rate of promotions, our tremendous lost wages. We are really aware of those lost wages, and given the roiling changes that we're all trying to manage in terms of the budget, just to reiterate that our priority is wages, and we share that both with BAC, SLG, and others. So we're going to be looking at that, and I look forward to BAC conversations, given that you're absolutely right. The original projections are not what we are looking at now. So we're going to be prioritizing that even in the midst of those changes. Thanks for noticing that. Okay, I think the rest of we've answered around Bennington, and good. I think we're done. Yay! Appreciate all these questions.
Thank you.
All right, are you ready for the video?
Yeah, so excited about this video.
Okay. All right. Sorry, just a moment.
Yay.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your time today. We really appreciate it. And Betty, did you want to sign off?
Sure. I was wondering though if you have time to answer that one last question there.
Oh,
Lori.
I didn't see it.
One more question there.
The comment about a lot of hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's the way it feels like. We kind of feel the same way. We want to have a safe reunion. And that's really more important than anything else. So, and we've been, the advancement staff has been just thinking about that nonstop, and that's the way it feels. And our peers are all doing the exact same thing there. We do understand about the additional earning, the year of additional earning. It's incredibly tough. We feel proud that we've been able to maintain earning. And I know that's not enough, but it is more than pretty much what most colleges have done. And that wage continuity is incredibly important to us. So we want to acknowledge the loss. We'll do everything we can. Our number one focus is wage continuity. And we are going to be looking at that in this year's budget cycle. We're really trying not to kick things down the road, but trying to be as safe as we possibly can as we turn back into a year that will be almost like normal, but not completely normal next year. That is our hope. And we are hoping, as we said, within the next 3 months to look at those pay bands, and the difference between MIS and Vermont campus is something that's very much on our mind as we look at pay bands. And I know Laura would agree with me that that's a really key element. So want to make sure we're going to keep moving, and there will be momentum. It's just not as fast as we want it. But that's why we wanted to give you that timeline that was as specific as we possibly could. David, you want to say more?
Yeah, I just want to add, we had to make Middlebury decisions over the course of this unknown time. I maintain we made the right decisions. We put our people first. And when you look at our commitment to wage continuity, coupled with what our federal government has been able to do, and a number of our employees are going to be getting a check for $1,400 for them and their dependents over the next couple of weeks, and that's great news. So a combination of Middlebury's commitment to wage continuity and keeping everyone employed, I maintain we made the right decision. We fully understand and respect what a disruption this has been. I think we come out of it on the other side, not foregoing any of our core values of who we are. And I want to recognize President Patton's leadership during this time, because how Middlebury has succeeded in being able to continue with the continuity of education for our students and its continuity to support its employees has been exceptional. So thank you, Lori.
Thanks, everybody. This is hard. I really appreciate this open conversation. Let's just keep doing this. It's a new tradition and I like it. And I think we really have staff council to thank for pushing us during COVID time to continue to communicate. And I really like that this is one of those new practices that is a silver lining. Appreciating again all you do.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and for all the presenters for taking time to answer our questions. And thank you so much, all the participants. I want to wish you all a wonderful day. If you have any more questions or you want to connect with us, you can reach us at staffcouncil@middlebury.edu. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Betty.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thanks all.